Hello, everybody. Welcome to my hangar. I just thought I'd talk a little bit about the trip to Oshkosh and back, and a couple little systems issues I had with the plane on the way there and on the way back, and what I'm doing. So we'll start in order. Um, so on this plane, I put three little micro switches on the two main gear inner doors, and then on the nose gear door, and they're all in series. So when they're closed, it sends a voltage up to my Aircraft Extras AG6 annunciator, which does a lot of things, but one of the things it does is it's monitoring for voltage on that circuit. And if it doesn't get it, then it tells me that my gear doors are not closed. So it's a good way to know if they're starting to come down at all. Unfortunately, they sometimes report wrong because I'm just using these little micro switches, which I'll show you here. And the nose gear door especially, it bends every once in a while and it doesn't close the circuit, and so I've got to figure out a better little switch to put up there on the especially on the nose gear door, to be able to have that happen. So I took off and it was telling me that my gear doors weren't closed. I knew that they were all up, and I figured it was just that. So I didn't want to turn around because it was going to be a long day of flying, so I continued to fly and got to Hugoton. Kansas was my first fuel stop from Tucson, and so what I did is I turned the camera that I put underneath the left wing. I turned it towards the gear so I could see it when I took off. I took off, looked at it on the phone, and it showed me that the my inner gear door on the pilot side was straight down. It hadn't moved it at all. I'm like, great. So I stopped at Dodge City, Kansas, and looked up under there. And what I found was the little plunger on the sequence valve, which I'll show you a picture here, had fallen out. So what happens on this plane is a hydraulic landing gear system. When the gear goes up, they hit a little. All three of them hit a little sequence valve, which then allows the high pressure hydraulic fluid to go in and close the inner gear doors, or the nose gear door. And it's a little adjustable, little 832 bolt is all it is, that you adjust it so when the gear door goes up, it pushes the little plunger and allows it to go. Mine had fallen out apparently. Last time I was working on it, I didn't tighten up the little lock nut real well, and so it just vibrated out and fell out. Rather than try to fix it in Kansas, I just took the gear door off and just flew the rest of the way with the gear door off. No big deal. It didn't even really seem to slow me down. When I got home, jacked the plane up, manually swung it, put a metal 832 one in there, got it adjusted right and locked up. So no big deal, no harm, no foul. The plane flew just as well without it. If it slowed me down, it was really imperceptible. So that was the one thing. That was really nothing. But on the way home, on the way there and on the way back, one of the things I also noticed was my oil temperature. I've always had a problem with this engine running really hot, and it's not uncommon because the cowling on this thing is really, really tight, and it's really doesn't cool well unless I'm doing better than 140 knots indicated. And my oil temperature has always run high, always run closer to 215, 220 in cruise. I've tried to get it down. I've moved the cooler all over the place. And right now the cooler is in front of, I'll show you a picture here. The cooler is in front of cylinder number 2, where the air intake used to be for the air filter. It seems to work best there, but it's still, even on the trip out, the long flight out to Oshkosh and back, the oil temperature was still running higher than I thought. So while I was at Oshkosh, I was staying with my son who lives in Appleton, and so I was reading through the build manual one night, and I noticed that the build manual, and this is an old build manual from back when Lancer was in Oregon, it specifically called out, it didn't say you had to use it, but it was just when they were talking about the cooling system, they specifically said, our 9-row coolers, blah, blah, blah. Well, this plane had a 7-row cooler in it, which is what a typical Lycoming 0320 calls for, is a 7-row cooler. But I took that like, okay, well, if they're specifically calling out, and this was the build manual for the 320, for the Lancer 320, not for the Lancer 360, and it specifically said a 9-row cooler. Well, let me put a 9-row cooler on it. I mean, that's a 28% increase in cooling area. it should definitely help. So I'm going to be replacing, if I can make it fit up there, great. Otherwise, I got to figure out where to move the oil cooler to. But I'm going to be replacing the 7-row cooler with the 9-row cooler and see if that helps. But the big problem I had was I had noticed when I was flying back that my voltage indicator was slowly dropping. It started out at about 12.9. When I took off, I'm like, it was showing, reading me 12.9 volts, which I didn't like that. But it was still okay. I'm like, okay, I can live with that. But when I got to over New Mexico, it was really starting to drop, and it slowly went down to, it was 12.7, then 12.6, then 12.5, and finally, when I got just past Safford, coming back in, the electronic circuit breaker in there starts calling out in my ears, generator, generator. Basically, what it's telling me there is that it's not sensing the voltage coming from the alternator or generator. It's not getting any voltage on that circuit anymore. So great. I had about another half-hour flight. I could have stopped at Safford, but I'm like, I can make it home on the batteries. So landed here, took the alternator out, and yeah, sure enough, it's dead. So I just said, I'll just have this one rebuilt. So I took it up to Tucson Alternator and let them rebuild it, and they did a great job. I mean, it looks brand new. I mean, here's a picture of it. It's just beautiful. So I'll put it back in. It's putting out over 14 volts like it's supposed to be. That's what I'm going to be doing. I got a bunch of things to fix on this plane and get it ready for other long flights, because that's the farthest I've ever flown this thing at one time. Typical flights around here in southwestern United States. I can get pretty much any place I want to go in less than 2 hours. So flying it for 8 hours each direction was a good test on this plane, and all in all, it did real well. And just got a few things to clean up. So, all right, well, y'all fly safe, and talk to you next time.